Hi everyone, and welcome to another Oracle Guidance. Well, for this reading, I have asked the Spirit, the Universe, the Divine Intelligence to deliver us any kind of guidance or advice on how to navigate through these very, very difficult times. Because without a shadow of a doubt, things are really going to be heating up from now on. Because Mars is already touching a very sensitive degree, because on one hand, right now as we speak, it dances with Dark Moon Lilith, so this can awaken a lot of inner darkness, aggression, self-righteousness within all of us, regardless of who and how we are, what we embody. It is just an energy which is bursting out because Mars is the activator, and since it is in shadow, well, chances are it can bring forth the not so favorable qualities of Lilith, but I don't think it's Lilith that is the big power player here, for very soon it will meet with Eris, goddess of discord, rebellion, revolution, the female warrior, the awakener, who is in mythology actually the sister of Mars. So these two very potent planets speaking together and also forming a square, a very hard aspect with Pluto, who is the higher octave of Mars. So everything in this astrological picture speaks about conflict, strife, power games, control, manipulation, having our wills, fighting for what we believe in. So one way or another, this spirit of war, to be understood symbolically of course, or the spirit of competition, the survival, the instinct, the inner warrior is affecting all of us. Of course, it highly depends on us and our personal situations, our own psychological configuration, what we do with this energy. Because, for example, this is perfect for violence, for conflicts, for challenges, for, provoking other people. But at the same time, other people can use it just for sheer energy power, for work, to accomplish their goals, to ambition themselves, to stand up for themselves. It can be also a very powerful, divine breath of courage, of motivation. But of course, on the world stage, we can already see how this energy is playing out. Revolution, protests, violence, clashes between centralized power as the military and the police, law enforcement, and citizens, etc. So this is an ongoing theme that we're going to be facing until the very end of the year. So this is one factor that, without a shadow of a doubt, is going to be influencing all of us from the outside. But at the same time, this astrological configuration plays out in our own personal lives, at least in one area of life where Aries and Capricorn fall into our personal charts. And Pluto retrograde conjunct Jupiter retrograde and very close to Saturn. Well, that is a very powerful psychological energy, because Pluto is the planet of psychoanalysis. It is all of our unconscious or hidden or repressed secrets, traumas, pains, things that we would not want to face normally, and everything is being pulled to the surface. And since there is a square between Mars, Aries, and the Capricorn planets, well, chances are this is where we have absolutely no choice but to face the truth, confront it, and try our very best to change our situations with this energy, because Pluto and Mars are planets which promote change, transformation. Mars is the ancient ruler of Scorpio, the sign of change, mutation, transformation, something becoming another thing totally else in nature. And of course, Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. So both of these planets are very transformative. Of course, how that transformation enters our lives, well, it can be, for example, an act of surrender, giving up, stopping our obsessions, ripping out all the unhealthy or illusionary desires from deep within ourselves. But at the same time, it can also be ambitioning ourselves, or basically embodying our powers and just holding out, ambitioning ourselves with determination and, wisdom and diligence. We can just work and work and work and not give up. And ultimately, even fate has to give us what we strive for. Of course, none of this sounds so harsh or negative or troubling, but the way these energies can play out, the very nuance, the psychological impact of this energy can be extremely unsettling. This is where anger, frustrations, a lot of inner poison, toxin can just come to the surface. And of course, releasing it might not be the best idea, but neither keeping it within ourselves. So we have no other choice really but to alchemize it, especially people who have a very high emotional intelligence, have a deep knowledge of psychology or parapsychology, or of course spirituality. Well, these are the categories of people who can use this energy as an empowerment, even if it stings, or even if it hurts, even if it stirs us up deeply. We still do possess this power to just transform it. And Pluto, one symbolism of Pluto in Capricorn is fuel, as in the physical expression of fuel, for example, gasoline, oil, etc. And it also, how is this fuel being created by nature? Well, for example, the carcass of animals and trees, etc., under deep pressure, exactly the symbolism of Capricorn, a very powerful earth sign. Well, it liquefies, it turns into fuel over time, and also time is the key word. Saturn is in Capricorn, so the Lord of Time, Kronos, is there, so it already added the element of time. So whatever is crushed deep within us under the pressure, well, yes, of course, it is somewhat negative because it holds the imprint of the past, but this is where it's also fuel, and all we need to do is extract it and, of course, burn it. Use the power of Pluto and Mars to transform that fuel. That fuel is basically that psychological energy. It can be very well trauma, suffering, memories, the pain. Yes, that is negative and somewhat poisonous, but it's also fuel, and once we burn it, it becomes something totally else. And that is why, even though this is a time never ever experienced before by anyone, still there's this massive opportunity to use it as sheer fuel. And they say as above, so below. And there was a very important moment in this year when Pluto was direct in the sign of Capricorn, where the price of oil and fuel dropped significantly. And that might have been a celestial invitation, a symbol, a divine message telling us, well, this is exactly what we need to do, because this is the moment when all of us have free access to the inner fuel, and we can use it to our advantage. Or in an even more highlighted way, well, there was one point where the fuel actually was minus, as in, symbolically, you could have been paid just to buy fuel. Well, isn't that not just a celestial invitation that the universe is advising us to do this? It encourages it, it supports us, it makes this opportunity very, very attractive to tap into our inner fuels and just start burning it. So basically this channeled oracle guidance is advice and message of the universe, what it is that we need to do to navigate safely through this period, and of course, if possible, how we can turn it actually into our advantage rather than, suffer along with everyone else. Now, the first message is the Four of Cups reverse, clarified by the Temperance card. This is a really, really important message because the Four of Cups can be seen as the moment when we all got isolated, going back to March or April, when the social distancing was implemented. Well, of course, that had a physical effect. There was a physical, down-to-earth, palpable rationality to it. But it was equally a spiritual symbol telling us that this is where, on one hand, all of us are in the same boat and are interconnected. But this is where this interconnection does not require any effort from our behalf. It is simply a given factor. And on the other hand, because it comes naturally, it comes easy to us, because like it or not, we are simply interconnected, as in quantically, so it doesn't really need any expressive effort or action from our behalf. But that gives us the opportunity to do what so many of us could not accomplish in the old paradigm, so to speak, and that is to develop a really, really strong, unbreakable, almost sovereignly unified relation with ourselves. Because, in order to thrive and navigate through these troublesome times, and more importantly, the new paradigm that is coming very, very soon, it is on our doorstep. We need to be perfectly balanced within ourselves. And balance, measure, exactly temperance is the key word here, because this is where the two extremes should not really exist individually. Of course, that is also the main symbolism of Aquarius, because Aquarius is very, very balanced. It also promotes the individual, the distinctiveness, the uniqueness, which makes us one of a kind, unique, but at the same time it also promotes society, interhuman connections, where all these distinctive individuals are also equal and working together as a hive mind, so to speak. So basically, service to others and service to ourselves has to be equally as important. And it doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum we used to embody in the old paradigm. For example, some people were extremely self-centered, while other people were extremely self-sacrificial. And these two imbalances, so to speak, maybe they had a very good cause and they had a very strong role in the old paradigm, but this is where we have to find balance. It doesn't matter how we used to live our lives and what we used to embody in the past. Now we have to be balanced. So that means that the very strong self-centered people, for example, the biggest and bravest spiritual warriors out there, or the huge gurus, well, they have to embody much more compassion and just release the importance so that it can, reach other people. And the extreme self-sacrificial people, basically for whom life was an endless service to others, they have to right now embody service to themselves and use all their experience, all their skills, all that they have been taught throughout their journey of serving others. Now they have to apply the same thing and just nurture themselves and make themselves strong and powerful. Because this is the big, big opportunity, but it's not just an opportunity, this is almost like a must. We need to reach balance. Of course, this doesn't mean perfect balance. It means what balance, temperance, equilibrium means for us personally. And how do we know that? When we act from a place of maximum comfort with our inner configuration, well, that is our normal state of balance. Now for the next message, we have the Ten of Pentacles reversed and the Queen of Wands reversed. This also goes hand in hand with the Plutonic energy, because it suggests that many of us are so very prepared to step into the new era, the new paradigm, just begin anew, etc. But there might be a very concealed and hidden psychological blockage which kind of frightens us it frightens our inner cores, and we might not even be aware of it. And that is, the Ten of Coins reversed. All of us have years, tens of years, some people a lifetime of hard work, study, sacrifices, invested time, effort, from so many different perspectives, spiritually, psychologically, career-wise, work-wise, family-wise. The list is absolutely endless. And while our human selves, through our rationality and logic, by now have released the attachment, and the spirit shouldn't even be mentioned because the spirit was never attached in the first place. But the soul, this is where we might really underestimate the soul, because the soul can have attachments as well, but the attachments of the soul are not very clear to us. We won't know the main message of why we feel the way we feel. We will just feel a certain kind of frustration and fear without rationally knowing why. And this is because our souls basically are still a little bit attached to everything that we have worked for and sacrificed for in the past. And the only way our souls basically, are gonna release the attachment or stop feeling fear is if we just sit down with ourselves and just make a very serious spiritual commitment that it's okay to lose whatever, because we understand by now that the main duty we have in this existence is to protect our destinies, our physical selves, our human selves, the Holy Trinity that we embody. We know that we have to protect it, and it's no one else's duty but ourselves. And once our soul knows how serious and committed we are, body, mind, and spirit, then it will find the trust and the love necessary to release the fears, to release attachments. That can be a moment when even the soul says, well, I'm perfectly fine letting go of everything that I have worked for, because I know that there is more than enough power, mastery, skill in me to do something way greater than I have ever done in the past. And when the soul understands this serious commitment, then immediately that Queen of Wands is going to be upright, as in unlocking our true fertility, creativity, the healthiest expression of courage, and being able to take risks, but the kind of risks which can pay off in a very nourishing and blessed way, because if we have compassion and the desire to be there and share our blessings for others in our hearts, whenever we take a massive risk, well, on one hand, when that risk does pay off, regardless of what that risk can be, may it be an act of courage, a leap of faith, an investment, taking on a new job which would be way more intimidating in the past, and now you feel all of a sudden that you're ready, that you can do this. It doesn't matter what risk means for us personally. When it pays off, well, then we can share the joy and blessing with everyone equally. And when it doesn't pay off, there are not going to be hard feelings, because our purpose is going to motivate us to keep on going and going and going, and not have a bitter taste when our attempts fail. It is part of life. Now we have, for the next message, the Nine of Cups clarified by the Nine of Swords. Now this is also very beautiful guidance, because the number 9 reflects that, just how this massive pressure in the world has built up, basically, because it's already done. We are fully in the pressure cooker. And even external reality reflects that the pressure is way too much. For example, all the physical explosions, the Beirut explosions, for example, symbolically, metaphysically, they just mean that the pressure is out of hand. It is just blowing up on us. And naturally, that is also happening inside of everyone. Even the most serene, the most peaceful, even the most Zen people out there are absolutely feeling this. And that is the symbolism of the 9, because we're almost at that threshold. Because what comes after 9? 10, which in numerology is basically 1, a new beginning. So that can be interpreted as the Big Bang, where the 9 just basically contracts everything into a super dense state. May it be matter, spirit, energy, it is still very, very dense under pressure, and it's bound to explode. And when it explodes, it's already the energy of 1, because from that explosion, from the debris or whatever, something totally new is going to be born. This is where chaos is the mother of all things. And this is how chaos births something into reality. So that 9 of Cups represents that the emotional part of this pressure can be absolutely turned quite easily into our greatest motor, our greatest inner drive. Because instead of focusing on our fears, if we replace that with whatever we desire to experience, for example, happiness, joy, just being able to exist freely, breathe freely, be ourselves, being allowed to be ourselves, enjoying our existence. All of these are not selfish things, quite the contrary. We owe it to the human being that we are. For every single human being, this should be the biggest goal that this existence has to be all about, because it is happiness that actually feeds our souls and contributes to the stability of our consciousness. So desiring happiness, especially knowing that we truly deserve to be happy in the future that we're stepping into, is extremely important. Because, these true, pure, soul-level desires can just amplify the energy of hope, and that will make us attract all the positive things and everything that we need in our lives to succeed. But here we have the 9 of Swords as well, because, emotionally this can be accomplished quite easily, especially for those people who have a great experience in the world, dealing with the world of emotions, psychology, etc. But the mind and the mental sphere might not always agree with this, might many times challenge us and actually depress us, worry us, cause us to overthink, run out of control, because happiness and how that happiness can play out is not yet rational, logical. It cannot be anticipated by the mind, because on one hand, it does need some external influence as well. Because yes, we can make the decision to just be happy unconditionally. That's absolutely fine. But we're also, physical beings. So that happiness has to somehow exist on our outer sphere, in the material sphere as well. And that is what the mind questions. Because if in the present moment we don't have any opportunities, not even plans, not even how we can anticipate that in our lives, well, chances are the mind is not going to agree with our idealism and naivety. But this isn't actually a moment when we should silence our minds, because both of these cards are upright position, and from many different perspectives, these are a contradiction to one another, because the 9 of Cups can represent being extremely fulfilled with yourself, with your life, with your emotional world, with your inner psychological configuration, being in a state of serenity, being happy with who you are, while the 9 of Swords is the total opposite, depression, anxiety, your mind just challenging you, clawing into your being and hurting you. Well, this is where these two have to meet each other, confront each other. So when your mind is full of fears, anxiety, worries, or depression, unhappiness basically, This is the moment when you should allow and just face it, confront it, have a serious talk with yourself. Ask yourself, why do you fear it? And what it is that you have to do not to fear it anymore. Whenever you ask really inspired and wise questions, the answer is always there. And since our minds can very naturally and easily connect to the divine intelligence, just conversing with ourselves can lead us to the answers to all of our questions. So don't think of this as something absurd or ridiculous or schizophrenic. No, there is so much wisdom, there is so much power and knowledge in having conversations with yourself. Whenever you fear something, whenever you worry about something, whenever maybe you're a little bit paranoid or anxious, just talk with yourself. And I can guarantee you that the answers your own being can provide for you are such, I don't even know how to explain this, high quality maybe, so precious, valuable, unique, that no external source of knowledge can even meet its comparison. For example, hiring the world's most experienced and most powerful astrologer, well, of course it's going to be an alchemical gold for you personally, the answers that you're gonna get. And yet, it still isn't even equal to the wisdom you would achieve from a conversation with yourself. So, there are times in life when the answer is within, and that can only be uncovered if you are willing and have the courage to just confront everything that is inside of you. So this is the big picture of this message. Now the next message is the Eight of Cups reversed and the Justice reversed. Now this message might be telling us that so many of us either, looking at the collective on the world stage, trying to observe everything, or equally, if only we observe our own personal situations, our lives, etc., there is so much injustice there. And, this injustice, the sense, the perception of injustice is one element that is massively challenging all our faiths right now. Even, the most spiritual and loyal and devoted people are being right now challenged in their beliefs, and this is something totally natural because we simply cannot turn a blind eye to all the injustices sweeping over this world. But on one hand, what does this message tell us? That human justice, or the way justice exists in our human society, that is not divine justice, and we must not compare, physical justice with divine justice, because there isn't even a connection between the two. Basically, physical and earthly justice is imperfect and flawed by nature. It is just a copy, a principle, basically a power that has to exist in our world, because as above so below. If there is divine justice out there, well then we have to copy it and try to make it as perfect or as balanced, as righteous, as absolute as possible. But we are human beings, so not even our justice can be absolute and unlimited. So this is telling us that yes, we have gone such a long way from the ancient times, from the medieval times. We have evolved immensely, yet our current state of evolution is far from being such high level, especially in frequency and morality, that we cannot expect our justice to be close to perfect or satisfactory. So this is actually a goal that we have to give up on, in the sense that we can achieve it immediately, because there's still hundreds of years of evolution, especially morally, emotionally, and spiritually, that we have to go through until our justice system get even near to be satisfactory and to do a job more or less perfectly. So this is an expectation, like it or not, we have to surrender, because basically the vast majority of people have to believe in human justice. If that wouldn't be in place, well, imagine the chaos and the anarchy that would sweep over the world, and it wouldn't be people of the highest spirituality who would be the biggest victims of that, but people who are less evolved spiritually. Yet on the other hand, we also have to be wise enough and experienced enough to know that every big injustice in the world ultimately gives way and birth to evolution. It always takes us in a totally new direction, which without that unfavorable karmic event could not be possible. And human history is a very, very good example of all of this. So the message is that, of course, injustice does worry us. It does, challenge our faith. It does upset us. It does make us angry. And no matter what spiritual path we follow, even those people who follow, for example, Buddhism, which should be about ultimate peace and serenity, everyone is a little bit irritated and irked about all these injustices. But this is where we have to be wise enough to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and this is going to give birth to something new. This is basically a way the universe evolves itself. Like, think about chemistry. When a substance or a chemical compound enters into a chaotic, unbalanced, as in unjust state, well, that usually gives birth to new elements, new chemical substances. So, when there is imbalance, it always promotes something new. It is like a forced change, and that is exactly what's going on with all of us. So we shouldn't really take the injustices that are sweeping over the world personally, because it isn't aimed at us. It isn't like a divine punishment, even though it can be interpreted that way, absolutely. It is more like the catalyst needed to basically motivate us or push us out of our comfort zones to finally embrace our true potentials and the next step of our evolution. Next, we have the Nine of Pentacles reversed, clarified by the Five of Swords. Now, this is also a very relevant message, because it is not just the irrational kind of fears and worries of our mental sphere that can unsettle us and be a hindrance right now, but it can also be the quite rational and logical fears. And when a fear is very rational and logical, well, on one hand, that can pose an immediate danger which can threaten our beings, and on the other hand, chances are that it can very well become reality, because it follows the logic and ration which governs matter, the world of matter. And this is where one of our biggest fears is not being able to live an independent and free life materially, as in the Nine of Coins reversed. So, of course, this is where all of us, regardless of who we are, this is even totally outside spirituality as well, kind of fear that we are going to be enslaved. Now, what does that mean? It can be with the whole, vaccine stuff, the COVID stuff. It can be economically, politically, socially, financially, in other words, the material aspect of this big crisis. Now, that is something that worries all of us, and that is a very, very rational worry, because we just know the true extent of the damage and the situation that we face. So basically, the worry of not being able to be free, to be ourselves, to be materially, financially independent, or to work what we love, we're passionate about, or depending on other people, our communities, or for example, the state, the organizations of the state, the institutes, etc. Now, this is a very justified fear because chances are that this is actually going to happen one way or another. So basically, the guidance is that we absolutely have to be honest with ourselves. Our short-term liberty, as in maybe the year 2021, well, it is in danger, so to speak, but the Five of Swords tells us that rather than to approach this in a very aggressive, violent, immature way, we need to know that if we are willing to compromise just a little bit and work with each other, not necessarily centralized power, but even if centralized power wishes to cooperate or changes its attitude, well, that is going to be a moment when we can actually work together to improve everything greatly. So equally, we still have to take into consideration not just the negative parts, the imminent danger that we might be for a little bit, at least a couple of months or maybe a year, really disadvantaged materially. We also have to think about that there is every chance in the world for solutions, new ideas, or it can be like a sudden unexpected change of the situation. There are solutions out there, so the future isn't just doom and gloom. It may not be very optimistic right now because we are deep in the eye of the storm, but as the storm dissipates, well, the sun can come out anytime, so we can balance out our fears, and these fears are rational, but with the same rational type of hope and optimism, because where there is a problem, there is also a solution. So we are just trying our best collectively to come up with the most ideal solutions, which can actually please everyone. But in order to please everyone, everyone needs to make a very small compromise. So it isn't really just doom and gloom. Rather than focus on our fears, we should be really focusing on the solution, because if we might not be that much well off financially, materially, career-wise, name whatever you want, in the very close future, that doesn't mean that after a year or a little bit of time, the situation can turn into the total opposite, where freedom, independence, equality, equal chances for everyone, this is the future we're heading towards anyway, and it's the greatest and most powerful, knowledgeable, learned astrologers in the world that say this. And if they successfully predicted all these disasters and the collapse and the COVID situation and everything, like there were so many astrologers all throughout the planet who named it, including our website, well then we also have to see the solution, not just the problem. So chances are it is definitely gonna get better in a few years, as in that is gonna be the moment when we absolutely are gonna see and live the state where everything is better, that we're already stepped into our futures and we're doing it. But maybe in a year, in a couple of months, we can already start the improvement. So that is when all of us are going to be at work, our own individual unique ways to contribute, and that is not an unhappy future. That is actually a very beautiful, motivational, inspirational future that is going to give birth to so many new alliances, relationships, interhuman connections, charitable purposes. So the future doesn't look as grim at all if we try to look at the big picture and not just the immediate problems that of course are shackling all of us down one way or another. of course, the saying that wisdom, truth, and power is in the now, that is absolutely fine. But when that now is so dire that it unsettles us, well, we also have to take into consideration the close future when all of us are going to be working to make everything better, and that is absolutely not negative. And last but not least, we have the Tower and the Six of Coins. Now the Tower is, I don't even have to interpret it. Everyone knows what the Tower symbolizes, and in the present moment, well, there couldn't be a more appropriate symbolism than the Tower. But this particular deck, called Yoga Tarot, shows the Tower as a mountain that we have to climb, and the hardships of climbing the mountain are ours, that we took on ourselves. No one forced us. It wasn't like a divine punishment, because it is our goals, our ambitions, our desires that motivate us to reach the top of that mountain. And when we began this journey, we had a backpack very heavy, full of the past and everything, all of our survival skills, etc. And as we started advancing on this journey, we were forced to basically to make our backpacks, our crosses, as light as it possibly could be, where we only took maybe a chalice, as in water, nourishment for our souls, with us on the journey, so we don't, die of thirst symbolically. But perhaps we have already entered a path leading to the very top of the mountain, which is extremely dangerous. It is steep, it is slippery. The external conditions make it very, very difficult for us to climb even further. So basically what I'm saying is, all of us are feeling the Tower. All of us are feeling how very hard climbing up the mountain is in the present moment. But it's clarified by the Six of Pentacles. And this is the card of charity. This is the card of generosity. And naturally it represents divine intervention. It tells us that for those people for whom their mountains, symbolically understood of course, are the most dangerous, hard to climb, for those who basically might not have any hope left that they're gonna make it to the top, those who are actually seriously considering just jumping down and let fate take care of everything, well, it is those people are going to be the most blessed and advantaged, because when something is impossible for us in a human way, leave it to the divine. And chances are, if you were guided to climb up the mountain by divine forces, well, it's not going to abandon you, but it is going to offer you such a strong experience that it's going to stay with you for the rest of your existence. And that means not just this life, but any other lifetime, even a temporal state of your sovereign soul. Because when a true miracle happens in your life, when something which is impossible is still made possible by the divine forces, well, that special moment make your connection with the divine intelligence to be unbreakable. This is all of this. And this goes for those people who personally face a very, very difficult, almost impossible situation right now. Well, your situation is as hopeless and as, very, very difficult, exactly for you to attract the miracle in your life, the miracle solution, whatever that may be. And from that moment onwards, the trust you're gonna have for the divine intelligence, but more importantly, the trust you're gonna have for yourself, for your soul, everything that you are, is gonna actually birth you into existence in a way. Being born as a human being, the moment of your actual birth could not even go near it. This is gonna be a moment when it's actually the divine is gonna birth you, give you a totally new I don't even know how, a state of being basically, a gift of your own divinity and divine power, a gift of freedom, a gift of being permanently at one with the divine intelligence, well, that is going to be a moment of your glory, a moment of your salvation, a moment of your true rebirth. So, when you were a child, or maybe even before when you were born into this present moment incarnation, you might have asked the divine to show itself to you, to connect with you in a very, very intimate way. And this is how your dream, your desire, your request came into existence, because it takes a hopeless situation to actually show you that the divine power is capable of anything and everything, and it's even capable and willing to break its own rules, for example, the laws of physics, when it loves someone so dearly. So for you personally, this tower situation is leading you to the biggest miracle of your existence that is going to change both your life and the life of your loved ones, or those souls who are very deeply and strongly connected to you. Well, this concludes the reading. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like a personal reading, please log on to 1millionnights.com, where a dedicated advisor of your choosing would love nothing more than to offer you their gifts and light and just guide you and help you. Thank you once again. Wish everyone a blessed and safe day. Until next time, bye for now.